Israel's war cabinet unanimously decided to launch the operation in Rafah, and fighting has already begun in the eastern neighborhoods of the city. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your boots on the ground report about what is happening in Israel on the 214th day of the war with Hamas, Hezbollah, and all the other Iranian proxies in the region. But today, a new phase of the war opens. Let's dive into the details. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced shortly after the war cabinet meeting on Monday evening that there had been a unanimous decision for Israel to continue the operation in Rafah. This is being done to exert military pressure on Hamas so they will release the Israeli hostages. Arab media portals began reporting in early morning hours that the IDF ground forces and tanks had begun to enter the eastern neighborhoods of Rafah, supported by artillery. The IDF spokesperson's unit confirmed the report and said that IDF forces are now operating against Hamas terrorists in Mizrach Rafah, the eastern part of Rafah. Palestinian media portals also reported that there had been clashes in the El Shuka area and around the Rafah crossing, and that there was tank fire and artillery shelling from the east. Officials from the Palestinian Authority expressed confusion, saying they'd been informed that Hamas had accepted a ceasefire and that the war is over. But Israeli officials say that Hamas' announcement is meaningless, since what they say they agreed to is not what Israel had proposed. US officials are reportedly studying the Hamas announcement, and early indications are that they agree with the Israeli assessment that it's not what was on the table. In any case, the simple fact of the matter is that this war will not be over until Hamas is defeated and dismantled. Furthermore, once Hamas has been defeated, there will still be Hezbollah to confront on the northern border between Israel and Lebanon. However, the Prime Minister's office stated that although the Hamas proposal is far from Israel's necessary requirements, Israel will send a delegation of working-class mediators to exhaust the possibility of reaching an agreement under conditions acceptable to the State of Israel. In other words, Israel is still interested in pursuing diplomatic efforts to bring this war to a conclusion, but it can't agree to what Hamas is proposing, since it adds up to Israel agreeing to unilaterally surrender and give up everything it has fought and sacrificed for. I'll say more about this in a moment, but first I want to clarify something. The fighting in Rafah is meant to continue pursuing the goals that Israel stated at the beginning of the war. The main tactical goal of the current operation is the encirclement of the Rafah crossing, which will severely damage the ability of Hamas to maneuver inside the city. The operation is limited for now and can be expanded or slowed down according to the developments and the decisions of the political echelon. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to closely monitor the situation and update you on the latest developments. Please take a minute and help us spread the truth by clicking on the follower button. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us share more videos about what is happening in Israel with other people around the world. Now, once again, this is Boots on the Ground, so let's take a closer look at what's happening on the ground in Rafah. Around 10 p.m. Monday evening, IDF forces began to move against Hamas positions in the eastern neighborhood of Rafah, according to the statements from the IDF spokesperson's unit. The ground maneuvers were preceded by artillery fire and airstrikes on known concentrations of Hamas fighters and weapons. The maneuver advanced swiftly, and according to intelligence reports, IDF forces have taken control of the Palestinian side of the Rafah crossing between Egypt and the Gaza Strip. This is where Hamas smuggles in most of the weapons and money it uses to attack Israel and control the civilians in the Gaza Strip. So let's take a moment to examine where the Rafah crossing is. It is located 3.5 kilometers from the Israeli border, cut off by the IDF from the Salah al-Din highway. This is the main road in the Gaza Strip. The Givati Brigade controls from the Khir Ridge the crossing and the Salah al-Din road, and now the IDF is scanning the area from which rockets have been launched at Israel, including the shooting at Kerem Shalom this week. As of Tuesday morning, it was reported that 20 terrorists were eliminated in the battle so far, and 3 tunnels have been found and demolished. The Air Force has also made several strikes on terrorist targets in the area in support of the ground operation. The IDF spokesperson unit stated this morning that IDF forces led by Division 162 began tonight, under the intelligence guidance of the Shin Bet and the IDF, targeted activity and in limited areas in East Rafah against terrorist infrastructures of the terrorist organization Hamas. As part of the activity, forces from the 401st Brigade's combat team achieved operational control of the Rafah crossing on the Gaza side in eastern Rafah, following intelligence information that terrorists are using the crossing for terrorist purposes. Elsewhere, the Egyptian news channel Al-Qara broadcast reports overnight on Monday and into Tuesday morning, showing heavy fighting in the area of this crossing, indicating that Hamas was trying hard to keep control of it. They know how important it is to their ability to operate, and they didn't want to give it up. Reports in other Arab media portals indicated that the Rafah crossing had been cleared of civilian workers and was being operated completely by Hamas terrorists. The reports also said that IDF forces were advancing up along the Philadelphi Corridor, essentially taking control of the border between Egypt and the Gaza Strip away from Hamas. In a related development, Egyptian forces reported that they have blocked Palestinians who tried to flee the fighting from entering Egyptian territory. The IDF operation to secure the Philadelphi Corridor came at the same time as the move into the eastern neighborhoods of Rafah. It was announced by the IDF spokesperson's office at 10 p.m. shortly after the news broke about Hamas's acceptance of a deal that was not even on the table. Israeli officials made their own statements saying that this was an obvious attempt by Hamas at deception which no one should be fooled by. Hamas is trying to make it look like Israel is the one who refused to accept a ceasefire deal. But don't be fooled, because that is not what is happening. The deal Hamas says it has agreed to is not the deal that Israel proposed, and it includes points that Israel has said over and over again that are not acceptable. The proposal is far from the requirements set by Israel, read the official statement from Netanyahu's office. The proposal that was put forward by Hamas does not correspond to the dialogue that has taken place so far with the mediators, and it has significant gaps, according to the War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz. Despite this obvious attempt by Hamas to deceive the world, Israel's leadership has decided to send a special delegation to meet with the mediators in Cairo to exhaust the possibility of reaching an agreement under conditions acceptable to Israel. On that point, let's take a look at what conditions Hamas is trying to set. For starters, they want it to be understood that after the fighting stops, they will be allowed to retain civil administration along with political and security control over the civilian population of the Gaza Strip. They are also demanding that in return for Israeli hostages, hundreds of Hamas terrorists who are currently being held in Israeli prisons will be released, including many who were sent to prison because they murdered Israelis. So Hamas said yes to the deal, but not the deal that was offered to them. American officials have recognized this and rejected Hamas's claims that it agreed to the ceasefire proposal, saying that Hamas has actually made a counter-proposal which includes changes and will require continued negotiations. The officials also told CNN that Hamas made amendments to a previous proposal. These amendments include a new proposal that Israel would not be able to veto any demand for the release of prisoners with blood on their hands. In the Egyptian proposal, both sides have veto, and thus Israel can actually prevent notorious terrorist icons like Marwan Barghouti and others who murdered Israelis from being released. Another, and particularly problematic section, concerns Hamas's refusal to release only live abductees in the first phase. Hamas announced that it is ready to release 33 hostages, dead or alive. In fact, the proposal says that Israel will only accept 18 hostages if it does not agree to the end of the war, and the other 15 only if it does. Another change is that Hamas is now refusing to exile its senior officials from the Gaza Strip at the conclusion of the hostilities. The ratio of free and prisoners are also different, as Hamas is now demanding 30 prisoners instead of 20 for each released hostage, and 50 instead of 40 for each female soldier. According to the current agreement, from the third day, the IDF will withdraw completely from Rashid East to Salah el-Adin after the release of the first 3 hostages, compared to a withdrawal after 7 days in the previous proposal, after the release of all the women. The current agreement states that Hamas will release 3 abductees every week, compared to the release of 3 abductees every 3 days in the previous proposal. Another clause that was not included in the previous proposal is that on the 22nd day of the first phase, Israel will release all the prisoners from the Shalit deal who have been re-arrested. In addition, the proposal to which Hamas said yes also includes giving permission to at least 50 terrorists to pass through the Rafah crossing from the very first day for medical treatment, instead of an agreed number of wounded terrorists who will be allowed to pass after the 14th day of the agreement. Another significant change concerns the second stage, and in fact the question of ending the war. In the previous agreement, it was written about the completion of the agreement regarding the arrangements required to restore sustainable peace. In the new agreement, on the other hand, it is written Declaration of Sustainable Peace, meaning the cessation of military operations and hostilities and its entry into force even before the exchange of prisoners. The New York Times noted that the parties will probably clash over the meaning of this term. A source in the Middle East said that Hamas sees this term, sustainable peace, as the end of the war, when Israel stops military operations and withdraws from Gaza. The second source said that the parties agreed to this term a few weeks ago, with Israel objecting to any reference to a permanent ceasefire. In the third and final stage of the deal, the new proposal included a clause that was not in the previous one: a complete end to the siege on Gaza. 2 sources quoted in a CNN report said that in recent days the mediators made changes to the proposal, to which Hamas has now responded, and according to the sources, the goal was to find ways around obstacles for Israel. The head of the CIA, William Burns, who arrived in Cairo last week, continued from there to Doha, Qatar, and according to the report, worked with the Qataris to change the wording of the proposal so that from Israel's point of view, it would be an acceptable basis for negotiations. The sources stated that Hamas actually responded to the same amended proposal. The second source, a diplomat, noted that Burns received the Hamas reply right when he was in a meeting with Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed El Tahani in Doha, and that he immediately received a copy. One of the sources said that the biggest obstacle was not changed: the dispute over a permanent ceasefire, which Hamas insisted on throughout the contracts, and the ways in which an agreement can be reached between the parties on this issue. If I can make a brief comment on all of this, it is apparent that Hamas is making an unacceptable proposal with demands that only give it more power. They are acting as if they've won this war and are in a position to dictate terms to their defeated opponent. This is utterly delusional and would be funny if it wasn't so dangerous and tragic for the civilians of Gaza and Israel. This is why we will continue to work hard to bring the truth to the world, and we need your help. take an active part in spreading the truth, subscribe to this YouTube channel. And if you'd like to see additional videos like this, please donate through the link you see on YouTube or go to our website at www.tbn.org/Israel so that together we can spread the truth as far as possible. I want to conclude by paying respect to the heroes of Israel who fell defending the state of Israel in the last 24 hours. 2 IDF soldiers, Acting Major Dan Hamhaji, 31 years of age, from Kfar Oranim, and Acting Major Nachman Natan Hertz, 31 years, from Elazar, that were killed on Monday by a drone that was fired by Hezbollah terrorists at the city of Metula on the northern border between Israel and Lebanon. These 2 soldiers were serving in the 6,551st Patrol Battalion, and one of their comrades was also wounded in the attack, but he is expected to recover. Since the beginning of this war, 612 IDF martyrs have fallen in battle. I want to ask you to continue spreading the truth, but it's also time to do more than that. Please watch these videos and share them with people who you know are interested in knowing the truth about what's going on in Israel so they can pray into the situation. Pray together with us for the peace of Israel. Pray for the IDF soldiers. Pray for the civilian population in this conflict on both sides that are affected by this terrorist organization. And together, let's pray for the Israeli hostages to be released and for the peace of Jerusalem. Thank you for your prayers. They mean the world to us. Keep standing with Israel in this battle, and let's stop Hamas here in Israel, in the Middle East, before it reaches the entire world.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.